Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, apprentice engineer pisses off the crew, gets left behind 250 miles from home. I did as they asked, so what's the issue? Workers stage a coup against the manager. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Apprentice engineer pisses off the crew, gets left behind 250 miles from home. Samir's age, I got a gig working a weekend music festival. Fairly simple too, 10 bands per day and all pretty standard rock and roll fare. Bossman puts 4 of us out on the gig. Me, Dreadful Boris, Big Chris, and Hammer. He also said we'd be taking out an apprentice, a young lad who was the son of a local promoter. Well, always nice to have an extra pair of hands, and it's good to help train the next generation. After all, that's how we learned in the past. As it turned out, this lad was about as much use as an aqualung to a trout, and had an entitled attitude the size of a mid-ranged African country. On the journey down in the truck, he was boasting as to how he was a really good sound engineer already, and that he could probably show us a few tricks. Oh, really? We get to the venue and get busy unloading the truck. We've got a 16-tonner stuffed to the gills with 2 sounds desks and about 16 kW of sound gear for front of house and about 6 kW of monitors. As you might imagine, this is pretty heavy stuff, and it takes all of us to safely unload it and get it stacked up in place, except that, after unloading the first amp rack, all on wheels but still around 80 kilos, the entitled brat snottily announces that, "I'm a sound engineer, not a humper," and promptly strolls off. Okay. Well, we don't really need him gumming up the works. We're all well used to slinging boxes around. So about an hour later, we've got the rig stacked up and strapped down, run out the multi-core to the FH desk, and are ready to start cabling up and tying power into the on-site generator. Out of nowhere, the spotty oik emerges from whatever hole he had buried himself in and asks what he can do. I say, "I'm going to plug up front of house. Perhaps you could help Hammer cable up the speakers." I don't take orders from girlies. Quick side note here. Hammer was 5 feet 9 inches, drop-dead gorgeous, and as hard as nails, hence her nickname. She was also a damn fine FH engineer and a bloody good mate. Boris, Chris, and I collectively groaned inwardly and winced in anticipation of a full 16-inch broadside from Hammer. Seriously, folks, you do not mess with her unless you want the family jewels dangling from the nearest tree. Instead, she smiles sweetly, never a good sign, and says, "Well, I'm sure you'll learn something useful." I then go off to play with cables FOH, while Boris and Chris busy themselves with the monitors. A while later, I'm back on stage. Spotty Oik has wandered off again. Hammer has this resigned look on her face. What happened? I ask. Turns out that, despite cables and connector ports being well labeled, the Oik had managed to make a complete pig's ear of plugging up the amp racks. Trust me, it's very hard to make this kind of mistake. I found the Oik some moments later and told him that it was not the proper way of doing things, and that if he wasn't sure what to do, that he should always ask one of us beforehand. What then came out of his mouth absolutely floored me. I don't need to know all that shit. I'm a sound engineer. Hammer, who was standing a few feet away, snorted derisively and rolled her eyes heavenwards. It took me a few seconds to process this particular nugget of stupid. Well, you have to know how all this works. It's part and parcel of the job, and as you're here to learn, I suggest you pay attention. Well, you're just a bunch of roadies. What do you know? Upon delivering this charming Bond MOT, he ambles off, again, leaving me to retrieve my jaw from off the deck and Hammer barely able to restrain a fit of laughter that would have incapacitated a rhino. At a guess, this idiot thought he was going to be white-gloving front of house for the whole gig. An hour or so later, we're all set up, and we now have a fair idea of the acts that are going to be performing. In situations like this, you rarely get the opportunity of a full-blown sound check, so you have to rely on experience to set the desk up from cold. Luckily, we got the first act on stage a half hour before the kickoff, so I could quickly get a rough sense of the overall setup. A bit of exposition. It's convenient to reuse channels across acts, so I generally keep the first 20 or so channels for drums, bass, and guitars, and the last half dozen or so channels for vocals. If a band comes in with anything else, percussion, brass, Tibetan nose flutes, etc., we whack them on channels in the middle. Keeps things nice, simple, and consistent across the board, and becomes important in a moment. The working procedure in show is also simple. Dreadful Boris and Big Chris run the monitor desk, and Hammer and I run front of house. We'll do 2 acts each before handing over to the other, saves wear and tear on the ears, and when we're not running the desk, we'll handle setting up the stage for each act and troubleshooting where necessary, as well as doing runs for food and coffee in between. We also tasked the spotty oik with helping with the stage setups, which rapidly proved problematical. We finished the first act and aimed to do the turnover within 15 minutes. Generally, the incoming act will tell us their mic requirements and we'll write up a mic plot which then gets sent up to the front of house desk. Up comes Spotty Oik with the mic plot, and he goes back to help with the stage setup. As I'm checking each mic, I notice that I cannot hear the vocal channels. No sooner had I spotted this than Dreadful Boris comes on the intercom and asks me if I can hear the vocal channels. He can't hear them either. He then goes off to check the stage box where all the mics are plugged into. From all the way out front, I hear him shout, F***CK me. Seconds later, he's back on the cans. Do you know what that idiot has done? Only repatched all the vocal channels so that all the plugs on the stage box are lined up neatly one after the other. His words. Boris rapidly repatches the mics and we're good to go again. A few hours later, and I'm starting my second shift out front. I won't bore you with my experiences of riding herd on Spotty Oik on the stage shift, which, shall we say, was interesting. Currently on stage is a rather nice jazz septet. I love doing jazz. Give me a nice 20-piece big band and I'm a happy bunny. Up strolls he who shall not be mentioned and asks, when can I have a go at mixing? I'm really good, you know. Seeing as he's here to learn, I tell him he can take the next act under my supervision. This happened to be an acoustic duo, 2 guitars and 2 vocals. Even the most tyro engineer should be able to handle something so simple, right? Wrong. I've already set what I regarded as a sensible baseline on the faders for him to work with. First thing he does, he reaches for the master faders and cranks in another 15 dB, NO. Immediately the rig teeters on the edge of feedback and I rapidly pull the mains back. Look and listen, balance out the 2 vocals, then the guitars, leave the mains alone. He then starts making wildly inappropriate changes to the channel's EQ. Again, the rig starts to squeak. Okay, enough. I shove him out of the way and bring it back under control. I won't fatigue you further with the endless catalog of flub-ups and attitude that he managed to effect over the rest of the weekend. Suffice it to say that despite the best efforts of myself and Hammer to try and teach this guy, they all went a naught. Couple this with the constant drip of snide commentary about how he was really a better engineer than the rest of us, and by the end of the weekend, we're all pretty pissed off. Come the end of the event, and it's now the fun part of striking the rig and loading out. I'm being sarcastic about the fun part, by the way. 2 solid days and we're all knackered, and the last thing we want to be doing is the get out, but, of course, it has to be done. It's always an all-hands-on-deck situation, except the Spotty Oik has, once again, vanished into the woodwork. 2 back-breaking hours later, and we're all done, and the truck loaded to go home. So where is the Spotty Oik? Nowhere. We give it a good 15 minutes, but no joy. We then decide to go look for him, so we spend another 20 minutes trolling around the site trying to find him. Again, he's done a disappearing act. We get back to the truck. It's now close to 3 a.m., and almost simultaneously we say, F***CKM. We climb back aboard and drive the 250 miles back to the warehouse to unload. Next afternoon, Bossman calls me to find out why we left the Spotty Oik behind. I gave him the cliff notes and was then told that the Oik had to call his dad at 3 in the morning to come and get him a 500-mile round trip. He then said, I never liked that promoter anyway. He was always late paying the bill on previous gigs. Next time he calls wanting a rig and crew, I think I'll tell him to get off. This was very entertaining to read, but also sums up the type of people I hate. Entitled, annoying, and stupid people. But I'm a really good sound engineer. I used to run concert sound and work as a general stage hand at a mid-size, 12K, indoor venue when I was in college. Really enjoyed the story. I remember dealing with a lot of brats like that who would never last long. Your writing is awesome. I don't know what quite a few words mean, but given the context, I can safely assume. You Aussies have some weird slang. I'm a Brit, not Aussie. Dreadful Boris, Big Chris, and Hammer. Sounds like a great D&D party. Love the story BTW. I'm dying to know everything about Dreadful Boris. Is it an ironic nickname? Is he truly dreadful? Is Dreadful Boris a stage name from a past wrestling career? I have so many questions. One of those, I am better at this than the people who have been doing this for years types. Sorry, pal, but you are the literal fruitcake of God's gifts to humanity. I don't think I would have waited as long as you did. Well done, and good riddance. I did as they asked, so what's the issue? I was 5 years old when my mom went to the store, in which before she left told me not to unlock the door nor open it for anyone. And I waited for her to get back by playing with my cat named Snuggles McCuddles Fluffy Pants for I forget how long. In turn, when mom returned from the store, I continued playing with my cat, completely ignoring my mom each time she asked me, "Can you please unlock and open the door?" because she left the key to our house in the kitchen, which she was getting extremely mad while shouting at me, "Just unlock and open the door already or else I'll ground you." Until my sister, 12 years, at the time, had unlocked the door for mom. Then a few minutes after my mom calmed down, she asked me, "Why didn't you unlock and open the door for me when I asked you to?" In which that's when I simply stated with a sweet little smile on my child face, "Well, you said to not unlock the door nor open it for anyone, and that's what I did, mom." Resulting in my stepdad snickering at this. All the while, my mom just stood there speechless, as if trying to process what I'd said. So was your stepdad not going to open the door, or what? I thought I was having a stroke reading this. I smelled burnt toast after reading this. For some reason, I imagined you in the locked car, so I got confused when she forgot her house keys. Was your sister in the house with you, or did she show up outside with keys? I thought the same thing. The other day, I was reading a lengthy article from a university professor detailing some observations regarding current generations' thinking patterns and developing skills. One thing he noticed was the complete lack of storytelling skills. It is as if there is no forethought put into it, no intentional choice of a sequence of building up elements towards making a point, no filter for the details to be included or excluded. The writing is the full reproduction of the avalanche of thoughts passing through the student's brain, with no order or sometimes relationship with the topic being discussed, just a stream of words poured onto paper and left for the reader to make some sense out of it. In the entire story above, there's a single period at the very end, so no indication to the reader when they can make a pause and take a friggin' breath, or to help with intonation, or to show an understanding of principal and subordinate sentences and why we make the distinction. We are told the name of the cat together with the acknowledgement that "for I forgot how long," although both are completely irrelevant to the story. At the same time, we are left without other essential information like who else was at home that would explain the context of the actions and their relevance to the point being made. All in all, 2 points out of 7 for the typing effort, but would not read again. Workers stage a coup against the manager. Circa 2005, I switched jobs. The new job came with an awesome perk: 3 months working in Spain. I lived back then in Argentina, all expenses paid, earning my salary plus an extremely generous per diem. For me, it was awesome. It meant that I would get pretty much the salary of a year in 3 months, plus the opportunity to visit Europe and travel for the first time. The caveat was that the project was a nightmare. The consulting company that hired me had won a really big bank project and overpromised. We had to finish the project in a really impossible time frame. That's why I was going there. It was kind of an all-hands-on-deck situation. When I arrived there, working hours were ridiculous. 9 a.m. was the starting time, and we rarely left before 11 p.m., sometimes even being there till 1 or 2 in the morning. I had no problem with that. I was living in a hotel. The only people I knew in the city were in the project as well, so we bonded over the situation. My colleagues were also really supportive. They made a point that I wasn't going to work on weekend, and told me that we work our asses off Monday to Thursday, but on Friday afternoon, you're going straight to the airport. You have to take on the opportunity to get to know Europe. We'll get by. The problem, as usual in this situation, was the project manager. We used to call him Sauron. He was a manager that took pride in saying, I started working in this company. I met my wife because of this company. I got married because of this company. I got divorced because of this company. I live because of this company. He was middle management. So, yeah. Since hours were really long, and pretty much everyone was exhausted from the night before, the tech team, minus Sauron, used to stroll down to a cafe down the street at 9:15 a.m. and have a hearty breakfast while we planned the day ahead. Team leaders were included, and it was kind of an impromptu and informal scrum meeting we held. One day, Sauron and I had a meeting with the client in the office. While I was there, client said to Sauron, by the way, I'm gonna need this and that for this afternoon, and Sauron said, okay, I'll go down to the bullpen and ask someone for that. Be right back. Just keep on with the meeting, and I'll join when I get back. But he never came back. The meeting finished with me and the client, and Sauron never came back. After the client left, 2 hours later, I went down and found that nobody was in the bullpen. Not a single soul. Not Sauron, nor the team. And then, I heard screaming from one of the meeting rooms. I opened the door and found the whole team shouting at Sauron and Sauron shouting back. Sauron was furious because the team was at the cafe. The team was furious because he had no right to be angry about that since everybody worked an insane amount of overtime with no complaints. And Sauron said, I don't care. You're hard to start your work at 9 a.m. You have to be here at your desks at that time. That's what we're paying you bums for. One of the team leaders, seeing that this was going nowhere, said okay and ended the meeting. Sauron pretty much disappeared all day having meetings and such. And then, at 7 p.m., we all left. Since Sauron asked us to work the hours they were paying us to work, we finished the shift and left. And we did that the next day. And the next one as well. We did it for a whole week. Sauron missed a couple of milestones and got an earful by the client and his bosses. Sauron realized his screw-up. He became docile and never complained about anything else, not the cafe meetings and not even Abbott the seldom longer than usual lunch. We did work a lot more hours than what he was paying us for, but the environment became more relaxed and Sauron made a point of trying to be at the bullpen the shortest time possible. We did work a lot more hours than what he was paying us for. Yeah, this isn't a win for you, buddy. I know, it wasn't going to be a win regardless. We were never going to get to work less hours anyway. What a doormat team. MC that consists of not doing free labor. They still did free labor, just not as much. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.